to the Borobudur Temple in central Java today. This is part of the official agenda of President Macron in Indonesia during his Southeast Asia tour. All right, well, what is the latest development right now? President Macron is on the way to the Borobudur Temple. He's just around 20 minutes ago has left the Canary area, or he's already left the previous place, road to the Borobudur Temple, and we're going to see the latest picture of the official visit of President Emmanuel Macron to the Borobudur Temple. Of President Macron to the Borobudur Temple has just arrived at the location. And as usual, hundreds of students, Indonesian students, are welcoming President Macron to the Borobudur Temple area. Some of the agenda from President Macron here in the Borobudur Temple. He will also meet with some locals, and they or he will have also an official photo as his visit in the temple. As for right now, as we can see, here is the aerial footage of the official visit President Macron to the Borobudur Temple. The convoy is going to arrive to the parking area of the temple. Besides having casual chit-chat with the locals, President Macron, of course, he will visit the Borobudur Temple itself, and it will be a close visit for both President Prabowo Subianto and also President Emmanuel Macron. And after the visit, both of the presidents from the two countries will join another joint press statement after the previous one that had been held in Istana Merdeka yesterday. As for right now, we can see the mount vehicles, and also we are just witnessing both of the president
and Madame Brigitte Macron to one of the Indonesian historical temples, also known as UNESCO World Heritage Site, Borobudur Temple.
So here's we can see both presidents are wearing white shirts. They look casual. They're going to enjoy the Borobudur temple itself and also the scenery around the temples. So if we look at the schedule, both the President Prabowo Subianto and also President Macron, they will go to Kenari Hill. So it is as a part of the ground of the Borobudur temple. It is located, of course, in Magelang Regency in Central Java Province, Indonesia. As we can see from the latest picture that we can observe right now on screen, the weather around or yes, that surrounding and around Borobudur Temple is so clear. The sky is so clear and also.
Once again, we would like to welcome President Prabowo Subianto, President Emmanuel Macron, and Madam Brigitte Macron to one of the Indonesian historical temples, Borobudur Temple.
As we are witnessing right now, both of the President Prabowo Subianto and also President Emmanuel Macron has just taken a picture with the background, the mighty Borobudur Temple. If we look at the schedule as well, so part of the photo session will be included the photo session also with President of the Republic of Indonesia and also President of France. We'll take a picture as well with some cultural activists from Indonesia and also from France. And of course, we have just witnessed the photo session between President Prabowo Subianto and President Emmanuel Macron. There will be also the photo session with President Prabowo Subianto and also the picture with Mrs. Brigitte Macron. As we can see right now, the sky above the temple of Borobudur is so blue and clear. It's really good weather there. Again, we are witnessing and observing the aerial footage of the Borobudur temple. As we can see, President Prabowo Subianto and also President Macron is going to go to the Borobudur temple. They're going to visit the Borobudur temple. So as we know, the Borobudur Temple is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Convention. And according to a UNESCO website, it is said that Borobudur Temple compounds is the famous Buddhist temple dating from the 8th and 9th centuries. It is located in central Java and it was built in 3 tiers, a pyramidal base with the 5 concentric square terraces, the trunk of a cone with 3 circular platform, and at the top, a monumental stupa. The walls and balustrades are decorated with fine low reliefs covering a total surface area of around 2,500 meters square. And around the circular platforms are 72 open-work stupas, each containing a statue of the Buddha, and the monument was restored with UNESCO's help back in the 1970s. The Borobudur Temple compounds is one of the greatest Buddhist monuments in the world, and it was built in the 8th and 9th centuries AD during the reign of the Sailendra dynasty. So the monument is located in the Kedu Valley, in the southern part of central Java, at the center of the island of Java, Indonesia. To be precise, it is located in Magelang Regency. So the main temple is a stupa built in the 3 tiers around a hill which was a natural center. All right, while we're waiting for the latest picture and also the latest activities from President Prabowo Subianto and also from the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, we're going to look back again what is the latest activities from the first day of the state visit of President Emmanuel Macron. French President Emmanuel Macron visited Merdeka Palace on Wednesday for bilateral talks and agreements signings with Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto, which aimed for expand French and Indonesia's cooperation in defense and other strategic partnerships.
On Wednesday morning, we saw the arrival of French President Emmanuel Macron accompanied with First Lady Brigitte Macron to the Istana Merdeka in Jakarta. President Macron was of course greeted with President Prabowo Subianto along with several members of his red and white cabinet. The arrival was followed shortly after with a tete-a-tete session followed by bilateral meetings between both delegations. The visit concluded with a joint statement from both presidents announcing several new partnerships across various sectors. All in all, 16 MOUs were signed during the visit, which includes both between governments as well as between businesses. Included agreements on defense, agriculture, transportation, culture, creative economy, and disaster risk management, among others. Now, defense is notably a big focus during the discussions, with Indonesia notably being France's largest arms client in Southeast Asia. In 2022, the two countries agreed on an $8.1 billion defense deal, which involved the procurement of several French fighter jets, and it is expected that that partnership is expected to continue. In fact, tomorrow, President Macron, along with President Prabowo Subianto, is expected to visit the Magelang Military Academy to oversee the training of the recruits that are studying there. Aside from that, President Prabowo Subianto also noted the discussions included the expediting of Indonesia's inclusion into the EU Comprehensive Econ Partnership Agreements, which will, of course, further trade relations between Indonesia and the broader EU. Aside from that, Discussions around education were also discussed, with President Prabowo Subianto pushing for more of Indonesia's higher education students in the fields of science, engineering, and medicine to be enrolled in French higher education institutions. President Prabowo Subianto also noted that both countries are committed to push for a two-state solution in regards to Palestine and are committed to an independent Palestine at the end. Now, here is what he had to say regarding that.
Salah satu hal yang sangat penting dalam pembahasan saya dengan Presiden Macron adalah apa yang disampaikan oleh Presiden Macron tentang kehendak Perancis untuk mendorong penyelesaian damai masalah Palestina, di mana Perancis juga akan terus mendukung langkah-langkah ke arah kemerdekaan Palestina sebagai negara yang merdeka.
Now, in addition to Indonesia and Singapore, President Macron's tour also includes a visit to Vietnam, which he visited earlier this week. This regional tour across Southeast Asia marks the first formal visit by a French president in nearly a decade. President Macron is scheduled to depart on Thursday as he continues the regional tour across Southeast Asia to Singapore, his final destination. This has been Aris Darta and Andira Putri for City Today.
President Prabowo Subianto welcomed his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron when the latter arrived in Indonesia on Wednesday morning. A festive state ceremony took place at the courtyard of Merdeka Palace, involving thousands of students who waved flags which symbolize close ties between Indonesia and France. So as we can see yesterday, President Prabowo welcomed French head of state Emmanuel Macron in a closed meeting at the presidential palace on Wednesday. Afterwards, they attended a meeting involving French and Indonesian delegates, which was held to mark 75 years of diplomatic ties between both countries. The meeting involved French and Indonesian state officials who signed joint commitment to boost bilateral ties. President Prabowo also underlined the importance of expanding strategic partnership, especially amid challenging global geopolitics and geoeconomics situations. He also expressed his confidence that Indonesia and France are strategically positioned to protect regional as well as global stability. Following the state ceremony, Macron is now set to visit a military academy in Magelang in a bid to boost defense cooperation. Additionally, Macron is scheduled to visit the Borobudur temple as a form of appreciation to a World Heritage Site which symbolizes spirituality and Indonesian tourism. The visit also reflects a holistic approach in bilateral relations, which involve various sectors such as politics, defense, education, culture, and economy. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto recently reaffirmed the country's position in collaborating with France while highlighting 75 years of Indonesia-France relations. And here's what he had to say.
Presiden Macron adalah kepala negara pertama dari Uni Eropa yang berkunjung secara resmi ke Indonesia sejak saya menjabat sebagai Presiden Republik Indonesia. Ini membuktikan kedekatan dan persahabatan kita yang kuat antara dua negara kita. Sekali lagi terima kasih kunjungan kehormatan ini. Kunjungan kenegaraan ini juga memiliki suatu makna khusus karena ini tepat dengan 75 tahun hubungan diplomatik antara Indonesia-Prancis. Juga antara kedua negara sudah ada hubungan yang lebih khusus lagi, yaitu kemitraan strategis yang telah kita luncurkan pada tahun 2011. Hari ini kami sepakat untuk melangkah lebih jauh lagi dengan mengadopsi deklarasi visi bersama menuju 100 tahun hubungan Indonesia-Prancis di tahun 2050. Ini juga menunjukkan komitmen kita untuk meningkatkan kerjasama kita di bidang strategis. Sebagai negara yang sama-sama memiliki tradisi budaya yang kuat, kami juga meluncurkan deklarasi strategis di bidang kebudayaan Indonesia-Prancis. Sebagai pedoman bagi kerjasama di berbagai bidang kebudayaan dan ekonomi kreatif yang berkontribusi terhadap pembangunan ekonomi dan sosial. Saudara-saudara sekalian yang saya hormati, dalam pertemuan empat mata antara saya dengan Presiden Macron, kami membahas secara intensif kondisi internasional, kondisi geopolitik dan geoekonomi, dan kami meninjau hubungan Indonesia dan Prancis yang penuh dengan persahabatan, saling menghormati dan saling mendukung. Kami tentunya sudah memiliki perjanjian kerjasama pertahanan Indonesia-Prancis. Prancis adalah salah satu mitra utama Indonesia dalam modernisasi alutsista pertahanan, termasuk dalam pengembangan industri pertahanan melalui joint production dan alih teknologi.
Talking about today's visit, of course, we're going to deep more about the Borobudur Temple. Buried for centuries beneath volcanic ash and jungle, Borobudur was once forgotten, its splendor hidden from the world. But today, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron stand before it. The witness is not just a monument, but a miracle of rediscovery that rewrote history.
The majestic Borobudur Temple, admired by both Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, would not exist today if it hadn't been rediscovered in the early 1800s. Built around 800 AD by the Shailandra dynasty, Borobudur was later buried under layers of volcanic ash and soil for centuries. It wasn't until 1811 that British official Thomas Stamford Raffles was informed about the hidden structure. Archaeologists believe the temple underwent 4 major construction phases before reaching its current form, constructed with 2 million stones symbolizing the universe in Buddhist cosmology. Measuring over 121 meters wide and 35 meters high, Borobudur's 3 levels represent a spiritual path from the world of desire to enlightenment. The lower level, Kamadhatu, symbolizes the realm of worldly desires, where humans are still bound by material desires. The middle level, Rupadhatu, depicts the transition phase toward enlightenment, where one begins to free oneself from worldly attachments but is not yet completely free. Meanwhile, the highest level is Arupadhu, which symbolizes perfect freedom from worldly attachments, the highest spiritual stage in Buddhist philosophy. Borobudur is a sacred site for Buddhists around the world. Thousands gather there each year to celebrate Vesak, honoring Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana. In 2023, it hosted the International Vesak celebration. Architect W.O.J. Nieuwenkamp once suggested that Borobudur symbolizes a lotus floating on an ancient lake. Although this idea is still debated, the temple's lotus-like shape and Buddha's posture reflect the key of Mahayana Buddhism teachings. In the 1960s, Indonesia reached out to UNESCO for help in preserving the ancient Borobudur temple. Extensive renovations took a long time and required significant costs. However, these efforts paid off as Borobudur was officially recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1991. The fusion of Buddhist culture with Indonesia's indigenous culture is what earned UNESCO's recognition. French President Emmanuel Macron's visit is not merely a bilateral diplomacy but a recognition of human heritage that transcends national borders and time.
Well, we're still waiting from the latest picture and also the latest joint press statement from President Prabowo Subianto and President Emmanuel Macron. Let's see what the story has written yesterday. So France President Emmanuel Macron visited Merdeka Palace on Wednesday or yesterday for bilateral talks and agreement signings with Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto, which aimed for expand France and Indonesia's cooperation in defense and other strategic partnerships.
On Wednesday morning, we saw the arrival of French President Emmanuel Macron accompanied with First Lady Brigitte Macron to the Istana Merdeka in Jakarta. President Macron was, of course, greeted with President Prabowo Subianto along with several members of his red and white cabinet. The arrival was followed shortly after with a tete-a-tete session followed by bilateral meetings between both delegations. The visit concluded with a joint statement from both presidents announcing several new partnerships across various sectors. All in all, 16 MOUs were signed during the visit, which includes both between governments as well as between businesses. The MOUs signed included agreements on defense, agriculture, transportation, culture, creative economy, and disaster risk management, among others. Now, defense is notably a big focus during the discussions, with Indonesia notably being France's largest arms client in Southeast Asia. In 2022, the two countries agreed on an $8.1 billion defense deal, which involved the procurement of several French fighter jets, and it is expected that that partnership is expected to continue. In fact, tomorrow, President Macron, along with President Prabowo Subianto, is expected to visit the Magelang Military Academy to oversee the training of the recruits that are studying there. Aside from that, President Prabowo Subianto also noted the discussions included the expediting of Indonesia's inclusion into the EU Comprehensive Econ Partnership Agreements, which will, of course, further trade relations between Indonesia and the broader EU. Aside from that, discussions around education were also discussed, with President Prabowo Subianto pushing for more of Indonesia's higher education students in the fields of science, engineering, and medicine to be enrolled in French higher education institutions. President Prabowo Subianto also noted that both countries are committed to push for a two-state solution in regards to Palestine and are committed to an independent Palestine at the end. Now, here is what he had to say regarding that.
Salah satu hal yang sangat penting dalam pembahasan saya dengan Presiden Macron adalah apa yang disampaikan oleh Presiden Macron tentang kehendak Prancis untuk mendorong penyelesaian damai masalah Palestina, di mana Prancis juga akan terus mendukung langkah-langkah ke arah kemerdekaan Palestina sebagai negara yang merdeka.
Now, in addition to Indonesia and Singapore, President Macron's tour also includes a visit to Vietnam, which he visited earlier this week. This regional tour across Southeast Asia marks the first formal visit by a French president in nearly a decade. President Macron is scheduled to depart on Thursday as he continues the regional tour across Southeast Asia to Singapore, his final destination. This has been Aris Darta and Andira Putri for City Today.
President Prabowo Subianto hosted a gala dinner for the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and his wife, Brigitte Macron, at the Negara Palace or Istana Negara in central Jakarta on Wednesday.
President Prabowo Subianto hosted his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte for a gala dinner on Wednesday after a round of talks in the afternoon. In his remarks, President Prabowo described their discussions earlier as intensive and productive.
Hari ini kita telah melaksanakan pembicaraan intensif dan produktif. Kita bersama-sama
et ensemble
kita bertekad, berkomitmen untuk teruskan kerjasama ini dengan sebaik-baiknya. Kunjungan Presiden Macron dan Ibu juga memiliki arti khusus karena memang saya secara pribadi dan keluarga saya merasa punya hubungan khusus dengan Prancis.
For his part, President Macron expressed happiness for close ties with Indonesia and peppered his remarks with a bit of Indonesian wisdom.
Berdikit-dikit lama-lama menjadi bukit, dit le proverbe.
Berdikit-dikit lama-lama menjadi bukit, kata pepatah.
Un peu avec le temps devient colline.
Seiring berjalannya waktu akan menjadi bukit.
Et peu à peu, d'année en année, oui, notre amitié a atteint des hauteurs de plus en plus élevées.
Dan sedikit demi sedikit dari tahun ke tahun persahabatan kita telah tumbuh menjadi semakin tinggi.
Il y a 75 ans, la France reconnaissait l'indépendance de la République Indonésia.
75 tahun yang lalu Prancis mengakui kemerdekaan Republik Indonesia.
Votre révolution a inspiré le monde, puis vous avez guidé un chemin d'indépendance et de non-alignement si singulier.
Also in attendance were ministers and officials from both countries. As part of the gala dinner, there were traditional dance and music performances. Andira Putri for See Today.
Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto recently reaffirmed the country's position in collaborating with France while highlighting 75 years of Indonesia and France relations. So here's what he had to say.
Presiden Macron adalah kepala negara pertama dari Uni Eropa yang berkunjung secara resmi ke Indonesia sejak saya menjabat sebagai Presiden Republik Indonesia. Ini membuktikan kedekatan dan persahabatan kita yang kuat antara dua negara kita. Sekali lagi terima kasih kunjungan kehormatan ini. Kunjungan kenegaraan ini juga memiliki suatu makna khusus karena ini tepat dengan 75 tahun hubungan diplomatik antara Indonesia Prancis. Juga antara kedua negara sudah ada hubungan yang lebih khusus lagi, yaitu kemitraan strategis yang telah kita luncurkan pada tahun 2011. Hari ini kami sepakat untuk melangkah lebih jauh lagi dengan mengadopsi deklarasi visi bersama menuju 100 tahun hubungan Indonesia-Prancis di tahun 2050. Ini juga menunjukkan komitmen kita untuk meningkatkan kerjasama kita di bidang strategis. Sebagai negara yang sama-sama memiliki tradisi budaya yang kuat, kami juga meluncurkan deklarasi strategis di bidang kebudayaan Indonesia-Prancis. Sebagai pedoman bagi kerjasama di berbagai bidang kebudayaan dan ekonomi kreatif yang berkontribusi terhadap pembangunan ekonomi dan sosial. Saudara-saudara sekalian yang saya hormati, dalam pertemuan empat mata antara saya dengan Presiden Macron, kami membahas secara intensif kondisi internasional, kondisi geopolitik dan geoekonomi, dan kami meninjau hubungan Indonesia dan Prancis yang penuh dengan persahabatan, saling menghormati dan saling mendukung. Kami tentunya sudah memiliki perjanjian kerjasama pertahanan Indonesia-Prancis. Prancis adalah salah satu mitra utama Indonesia dalam modernisasi alutsista pertahanan, termasuk dalam pengembangan industri pertahanan melalui joint production dan alih teknologi.
From energy transitions to creative diplomacy, The relations between Indonesia and France are showing promising new developments. This year, Indonesia is set to host the visit of French President Emmanuel Macron.
Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto will receive a state visit from French President Emmanuel Macron at the end of May 2025. The meeting between the two leaders is not merely a ceremonial event, but a strategic opportunity to strengthen bilateral relations across various sectors, including global security, green investment, and creative technology. Macron's visit also reflects the shared commitment to expanding concrete cooperation in addressing global challenges. And as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council and the seventh largest economy in the world, France has long been an important partner for Indonesia. The investment between Indonesia and France continues to show positive growth. In 2024, Indonesian Foreign Minister Sugiono stated that investment from France reached $328 million. These funds went into various priority sectors, such as renewable energy, critical minerals, logistics, green infrastructure, creative economy, and digital film. Looking back in 2021, France's strong commitment to Indonesia's energy transition was already evident, as French Foreign Minister announced a commitment of 500 million euros of $540 million through the French Development Agency, or AFD, to support clean energy projects in Indonesia. This step is part of a strategic agreement which was outlined in the Action Plan for Cooperation between two countries from 2022 to 2027. Additionally, France is collaborating with Indonesia on maritime affairs by supporting the development of eco-friendly ports or eco-fishing ports in Indonesia. This is realized through an MOU signing between Indonesia's Marine Affairs and Fisheries Ministry and the French Development Agency, or AFD, as a concrete step to promote sustainable marine and fisheries practices. Positive trends are also seen in the trade industry, as Trade Minister Zulkifli Hasan noted in 2023 that the total trade value between Indonesia and France reached more than 3 billion euros, or $3.396 billion. Indonesia's key commodities such as machinery, pickles, and vegetable oil continue to record significant exports to the European market. Meanwhile, cooperation in social and cultural sectors, education, and defense industry serve as important pillars of the strategic partnerships between the two countries. With diplomatic relations spanning more than 70 years, Indonesia and France not only share common interests, but also common values including sustainable development, global stability, and international cooperation. Furthermore, President Macron's visit will not only serve as a symbol of the country's strong relationship, but also as a window of opportunity for Indonesia's future.
From the early days of post-colonial solidarity to today's strategic cooperation, Indonesia and France have cultivated a relationship defined by trust, mutual respect, and a shared vision for the future. As both nations commemorate 75 years of diplomatic ties this year, their partnership tells a story not only of historical milestones, but also enduring relevance in an increasingly complex world.
Indonesia and France are making 75 years of diplomatic relations this year, a milestone that reflects a dynamic partnership rooted in diplomacy, defense, and shared global values. From post-colonial solidarity to today's comprehensive strategic cooperation, the two nations have continually evolved their relations to meet the demands of a changing world. France formally recognized Indonesia's sovereignty in 1950. Since then, ties have steadily deepened, grounded in mutual respect, and strengthened through high-level engagements and expanding areas of collaboration. President Sukarno's visit to Paris in early 1960s laid the groundwork for enduring political dialogue. Meanwhile, French President François Mitterrand's landmark 1986 visit to Jakarta highlighted shared interests in energy, technology, and cultural exchange, signaling a new phase in bilateral engagement. The relations took a significant leap forward in 2011 when both nations elevated their ties to a strategic partnership. This upgrade marked a broader and more coordinated approach to cooperation across key sectors. In recent years, defense has become a cornerstone of a partnership. Indonesia's procurement of Rafale fighters and collaboration with France's naval group on submarine development underscore France's key role in supporting Indonesia's military modernization. Economically, French investments in Indonesia have exceeded $1 billion over the past 5 years. Focus areas include energy transition, critical minerals, and sustainable infrastructure, closely aligned with France's strong support for Indonesia's just energy transition partnership. Cultural diplomacy also remains a vibrant pillar. Academic exchanges, film festivals, and artistic collaborations are building stronger people-to-people connections, fueling creativity, mutual understanding, and innovation. As Indonesia and France celebrated their 75-year journey, their partnership stands resilient and forward-looking, anchored in shared values, a commitment to regional stability, and a joint vision for a greener, more cooperative global future.
Indonesia and France celebrated 75 years of diplomatic relations, a historic milestone marked by the state visit of French President Emmanuel Macron to Indonesia. And this visit, for the first time, French Minister of Culture Rachida Dati also participated, choosing Bentara Budaya Jakarta as one of her destinations. As a cultural center, Bentara Budaya Jakarta serves as a representative platform to showcase the richness of Indonesian culture to the world. Minister Dati's visit highlights the strategic role of culture as a bridge to strengthen bilateral ties between Indonesia and France. It is hoped that this cultural synergy will encourage innovation and further develop the creative industries of both nations in the future.
Tout d'abord, plus globalement, c'est la première fois qu'un ministre français de la Culture se rend en Indonésie. C'est dans le cadre de la visite d'État du président de la République française, Emmanuel Macron, à l'invitation du président indonésien. Et c'est la troisième visite alors que nous avons 75 ans de relations diplomatiques. Et donc aujourd'hui, cette visite, elle s'inscrit sous le signe de l'amitié, sous le signe de la coopération, sous le signe d'un partenariat, mais le partenariat au plus haut niveau, puisque les deux présidents ont souhaité mettre cette coopération dans le cadre d'un partenariat dit stratégique. Et dans ce partenariat stratégique, il y a un volet culturel très fort que j'ai illustré depuis ce matin. J'ai signé des accords avec mes homologues qui concernent quoi? Qui concernent le patrimoine.
Right now, President Prabowo Subianto and President Emmanuel Macron are still at the Borobudur temple and talking about Borobudur, buried for centuries beneath volcanic ash and jungle. Borobudur was once forgotten, its splendor hidden from the world. But today, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron stand before it. The witness is not just a monument, but a miracle of rediscovery that rewrote history.
The majestic Borobudur temple, admired by both Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, would not exist today if it hadn't been rediscovered in the early 1800s. Built around 800 AD by the Shailandra dynasty, Borobudur was later buried under layers of volcanic ash and soil for centuries. It wasn't until 1811 that British official Thomas Stamford Raffles was informed about the hidden structure. Archaeologists believe the temple underwent 4 major construction phases before reaching its current form, constructed with 2 million stones symbolizing the universe in Buddhist cosmology. Measuring over 121 meters wide and 35 meters high, Borobudur's 3 levels represent a spiritual path from the world of desire to enlightenment. The lower level, Kamadhatu, symbolizes the realm of worldly desires, where humans are still bound by material desires. The middle level, Rupadhatu, depicts the transition phase toward enlightenment, where one begins to free oneself from worldly attachments but is not yet completely free. Meanwhile, the highest level is Arupa Dhatu, which symbolizes perfect freedom from worldly attachments, the highest spiritual stage in Buddhist philosophy. Borobudur is a sacred site for Buddhists around the world. Thousands gather there each year to celebrate Vesak, honoring Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana. In 2023, it hosted the International Vesak celebration. Architect W.O.J. Nieuwenkamp once suggested that Borobudur symbolizes a lotus floating on an ancient lake. Although this idea is still debated, the temple's lotus-like shape and Buddha's posture reflect the key of Mahayana Buddhism teachings. In the 1960s, Indonesia reached out to UNESCO for help in preserving the ancient Borobudur temple. Extensive renovations took a long time and required significant costs. However, these efforts paid off as Borobudur was officially recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1991. The fusion of Buddhist culture with Indonesia's indigenous culture is what earned UNESCO's recognition. French President Emmanuel Macron's visit is not merely a bilateral diplomacy but a recognition of human heritage that transcends national borders and time.
Well, we're waiting for the official joint statement from President Prabowo Subianto and President Emmanuel Macron. So let's rewatch the arrival of the two leaders at the Borobudur temple. So as we can see right now, this is the picture of the previous, like an hour ago, of the arrival from both President Prabowo Subianto and also President Emmanuel Macron. They were on Maung vehicles and they arrived at a part of Borobudur temple. So they arrived at Kenari Hill with, of course, a special convoy with hundreds of students greeted the arrival of both presidents. As we can see right now, this is the aerial picture or visuals from the arrival of President Prabowo and also President Macron. As we can see, the weather is so good right now at Borobudur temple. Blue and clear sky above the temple. And after they arrived with a Maung vehicle, so they walk on foot, of course, heading to the Borobudur temple. So as we know that Borobudur temple compound is one of the greatest Buddhist monuments in the world and was built in the 8th and 9th centuries AD during the reign of Shailendra dynasty. So it is located in the middle of jungle, of course, at a time. As we can see right now, President Prabowo Subianto and also President Macron has just arrived at the location. Both of the president wear a casual white t-shirts and greeted some of the officials from InJourney. As we can see, Ibu Maya Watono is also welcoming President Macron. So talking about the location of Borobudur Temple, the monument or the Borobudur Temple compound is located in the Kedu Valley or Lembah Kedu in Bahasa, It is located in the southern part of Central Java, at the center of the island of Java, Indonesia, because it is located in Central Java province, to be precise, in Magelang Regency. So you can see Borobudur temple from the far. The main temple, of course, is a stupa built in 3 tiers around a hill, which was a natural center, a pyramidal base with 5 concentric square terraces, the trunk of a cone with 3 circular platforms, and at the top, a monumental stupa. The walls and balustrades are decorated with fine low reliefs, covering a total surface of area about 2,520 meters square. So around the circular platforms are 72 open work stupas, each containing a statue of the Buddha. So the vertical division of Borobudur temple into base, body, and superstructure perfectly accords with the conception of the universe in Buddhist cosmology. It is believed that the universe is divided into 3 superimposing spheres. It is called Kamadhatu, Rupadhatu, and Arupadhatu, representing respectively the sphere of desires, where we are bound to our desires, the sphere of forms, where we abandon our desires but are still bound to name and form, and the sphere of formlessness, where there is no longer either name or form. At Borobudur temple, the Kamadhatu is represented by the base, the Rupadhatu by the 5 square terraces, and the Arupadhatu by the 3 circular platforms, as well as the big stupa. So the whole structure shows a unique blending of the very central ideas of ancestor worship related to the idea of a terraced mountain, combined with the Buddhist concept of attaining nirvana. So we're going to wait for the latest development on the ground while waiting for the joint statement from both presidents. We can still talk about the Borobudur temple. So the temple should also be seen as an outstanding dynastic monument of the Sailendra dynasty that ruled Java for around 5 centuries until the 10th century. So the Borobudur temple compounds consists of 3 monuments, namely the Borobudur temple and 2 smaller temples situated to the east on a straight axis to Borobudur. The 2 temples are Mendut temple, whose depiction of Buddha is represented by a formidable monolith accompanied by 2 bodhisattvas, and Pawan temple, a smaller temple whose inner space does not reveal which deity might have been the object of worship. Those 3 monuments represent phases in the attainment of nirvana. The temple was used as a Buddhist temple from its construction until sometime between the 10th and 15th centuries, when it was then abandoned. Since its rediscovery in the 19th century and restoration in the 20th century, it has been brought back into a Buddhist archaeological site. So talking about the three part of Borobudur Temple, the criterion 1 of Borobudur Temple compounds with its stepped, unroofed pyramid consisting of 10 superimposing terraces and crowned by a large bell-shaped dome, is a harmonious marriage of stupas, temple and mountain that is a masterpiece of Buddhist architecture and monumental arts. While criterion for the second criterion, Borobudur Temple compounds is an outstanding example of Indonesia's art and architecture from between the early 8th and late 9th centuries that exerted considerable influence on an architectural revival between the mid-13th and early 16th centuries. The other criterion, so Borobudur laid out in the form of a lotus, the sacred flower of Buddha. Borobudur Temple compounds is an exceptional reflection of a blending of the very central idea of indigenous ancestor worship and the Buddhist concept of attaining nirvana. The 10 mounting terraces of the entire structure correspond to the successive stages that the Bodhisattva has to achieve before attaining to Buddhahood. So talking about the integrity, the boundaries contain the three temples that include the imaginary axis within them. Although the visual links are no longer open, the dynamic function between the three monuments, Borobudur Temple, Mendut Temple and Pawan Temple, is maintained. The main threat to the ensembles is from development that could compromise the extraordinary relationship between the main monument and its wider setting and could also affect the outstanding universal value of the property. The approach to the property has to a degree already been compromised. All right, we're going still wait for the latest development on the ground, talking about the joint statement from both President Prabowo Subianto and Emmanuel Macron. Meanwhile, we're going for a break, but of course, we will continue the special update on the visit of President Emmanuel Macron at the Borobudur Temple on the 2-hour news show. I will invite Alin Maja to join the program with me, so we'll be right back after this.
Moto hidupku adalah bermimpi, berusaha, dan berdoa. Sebenarnya nggak nyangka juga sih, kayak tong setan ini, pekerjaan ini membawa aku sejauh ini sampai bisa main tong setan ke luar negeri.
Dari dulu aku sangat suka banget hal-hal yang berbau menantang dan ekstrim. Maka dari itu aku bisa terjun di dunia trail ini, yang dimana kan cewek itu jarang banget ya suka hobi begini.
Seni itu udah jalan hidup saya ya Mas ya. Bisa bertahan di dunia kesenian, bagi saya itu udah sesuatu yang sangat mewah.
Mungkin ada yang bilang, apa sih gunanya seni itu gitu. Tapi buktinya sendiri, seni masih ada.
Aku ya, seni itu ya hidup. Kita hidup di dalam seni, kita membangun seni itu sendiri. Jadi kita menjadi satu, bahwa kita hidup di dalam seni.
The Alpha generation, or also known as millennial children, is the youngest generation today. Cancel culture is an advancement of a series of bolder social process in the form of boycotts or canceling.
John F. Kennedy became the youngest president in the history of United States. The main cause of the outbreak of the Chinese Revolution was disappointment with the Qing Dynasty government.
Apalagi bersama saya Imam Darto di Ngonten ngobrolin tentang Nusantara. Hap, hap.
Wih, nggak banyak-banyak, Neng. Santai aja, lapar situ. Orang Malang ya?
Iya, Malang.
Oh, Malang.
Arek ngalam.
Oke, bisa baca bahasa ngalam?
Bisa.
Coba.
Matur suwun.
Wah, cuma segitu saja.
Ya, dia MD. MD-nya ada panjangnya tuh.
Apa tuh?
My Dream.
And hello to all of you. In case you're not aware, I'm Paul Palelli.
Langitazin ya.
Langitazin, long time no see.
Long time no
Bener ya?
see.
I make a lot of money. I have a company, and I was like, I don't.
Cut. 6 stars if I could.
Ya elah, bakso di depan, boleh nih kayaknya sekali doang.
Oh, he's gonna tip me? Wait, is it Italian?
Yeah.
What's the background there? Mas Bambi, you're not getting off the hook in this one. Gotta answer.
I love them both.
Hello there and welcome to our viewers in Indonesia and across the world. Of course, thank you. We're welcoming you and thank you for joining us on the 2-hour news show on Today, where for the next 2 hours we're going to bring you the latest from Indonesia, from the region and also around the world. And of course, currently we're going to bring you to the Borobudur Temple at Magelang Regency in Central Java to witness the joint statement from President Prabowo Subianto and also President Emmanuel Macron. So I am your host for today. My name is Muhammad Ahir, and of course I'm not alone because with me right now is our own Alin Maja with us. Hello, Alin.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, happy long weekend.
Happy long
For
weekend.
those who are in Indonesia, and we've been updating you on the visit of Emmanuel Macron to Indonesia. He happens to visit Borobudur, and also we will have more updates on the agreements and deals signed during this historical visit, as well as we will have the statement from Danantara regarding Ray Dalio, who said that he's not going to join Danantara. More on that on the 2-hour news show, but before that, let's take a look on what makes the headlines for today.
President Prabowo Subianto invited French President Emmanuel Macron to the Borobudur Temple in Central Java today. This is part of the official agenda of President Macron in Indonesia during his Southeast Asia tour.
Indonesian Economic Affairs Coordinating Minister Erlangga Hartarto has announced the signing of 27 MOUs worth $11 billion between Indonesia and France.
Elon Musk has stepped down as top advisor to U.S. President Donald Trump.
Later in our signature segment, See the Stories, we will talk about non-communicable diseases and how switching to a healthier lifestyle could help prevent them. Stay tuned for that.
Our first story, of course, talking about the recent event is held at Borobudur Temple. As part of his visit to Indonesia, President Prabowo Subianto invited President Macron to the Indonesian Military Academy in Magelang, Central Java, previously in this morning.
Yes, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron arrived at the Military Academy in Magelang, Central Java on Thursday. May the 29th on board police AW189 helicopter. The two heads of states were greeted by Indonesian Armed Forces Commander General Agus Subianto, National Police Chief General Listio Sigit Prabowo, and Defense Minister Syafri Syamsuddin.
Afterwards, President Prabowo and President Macron traveled from the helipad to the main venue in a Mau military vehicle. What made the moment special was that President Prabowo drove the vehicle in person with President Macron seated beside him. Upon arriving at the venue, President Macron was welcomed with a state ceremony as a mark of honor.
Afterwards, they inspected the troops by circling the field using a dark green Mau tactical vehicle. President Macron also bestowed the Grand Croix de la Légion d'honneur, which is the highest honor of France, to President Prabowo. The visit is a significant part of President Macron's trip to Indonesia and affirms strong strategic cooperation between Indonesia and France, especially in terms of defense and military education.
Monsieur le Président de la République d'Indonésie, Prabowo Subianto, au nom de la République française, nous vous élevons à la dignité de Grand Croix de la Légion d'honneur.
And right now we're going to hear the joint press statement from President Prabowo Subianto and President Emmanuel Macron live from the Borobudur Temple in Central Java.
Dengan yang mulia di situs bersejarah ini yang merupakan mahakarya peradaban dan oleh UNESCO ditetapkan sebagai warisan budaya dunia yang kaya akan sejarah dan makna spiritual. Indonesia sebagai bangsa yang mempunyai filosofi dasar negara adalah Pancasila, menghormati semua agama dan semua kepercayaan, dan adalah kehormatan bagi saya sebagai Presiden Republik Indonesia untuk hari ini menemani sahabat saya, Presiden Republik Prancis. Indonesia dan Prancis adalah dua bangsa yang besar yang memiliki sejarah yang panjang, budaya yang mengakar kuat, dan peradaban juga yang panjang. Kami juga memiliki semangat yang sama, nilai-nilai kemanusiaan yang sama, toleransi, menghormati warisan budaya, menghormati semua agama, kepercayaan, semua ras, semua kelompok etnis. Kita ingin memelihara kehidupan yang harmonis, perdamaian yang baik. Kami percaya hanya dengan persahabatan, kekeluargaan, dan kolaborasi, kita semua bisa mendapat kehidupan yang lebih baik. Yang mulia, terima kasih kunjungan yang mulia, dan saya percaya dan optimis bahwa kemitraan kita akan berlanjut dan menjadi jembatan bagi budayawan, seniman, pelaku industri kreatif, dan semua tokoh-tokoh masyarakat kedua negara kita. Terima kasih. Merci beaucoup.
Terima kasih. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Cher Prabowo Subianto, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, chers amis indonésiens et français, Mesdames et Messieurs, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, de nous accueillir dans ce site magnifique du temple de Borobudur, qui est le témoignage éblouissant à la fois de la grandeur et de la profondeur de votre civilisation. Le temple de Borobudur, et vous en avez restauré l'usage cultuel, est tout à la fois ce chef-d'œuvre architectural et spirituel, et est une manifestation de ce génie indonésien. Et en effet, devant ce temple, bâti au 8e et 9e siècle et qui a ensuite essaimé et continué d'inspirer toute l'Asie du Sud-Est, c'est la démonstration pleine et entière du rayonnement culturel de l'Indonésie qui est ainsi rappelé. Mais Borobudur, je le disais, c'est aussi un sanctuaire vivant, et nous avons pu le voir, où des centaines de milliers de croyants se rendent chaque année, illustrant également ce message universel de tolérance et de respect qui est celui de l'Indonésie. Borobudur est enfin le témoignage sensible des vertus auxquelles nous croyons, celles du multilatéralisme et de l'esprit de partenariat, puisque c'est en travaillant ensemble que le gouvernement indonésien et l'UNESCO ont réussi à mener à bien, il y a plusieurs décennies, la restauration du temple et permis sa protection et son inscription au patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO. C'est donc ici, dans ce lieu, que je veux avant toute chose exprimer notre profond respect, notre admiration pour la richesse historique, artistique et culturelle de l'Indonésie. Ce temple, en effet, n'est pas simplement un monument, c'est un symbole d'élévation spirituelle et humaine et une source d'inspiration pour le monde entier. Et c'est aussi ce qui nous lie, et nous ne cessons d'en parler depuis hier de nos points communs, mais ce rapport à ce que la culture, le patrimoine, la création peuvent apporter, ce qu'ils ont d'unificateur et d'exigeant, lie profondément nos deux nations et nos deux peuples. Alors aujourd'hui même, ici, devant ce temple, nous franchissons une étape importante en lançant un nouveau partenariat culturel entre l'Indonésie et la France. Et ce matin, nos ministres de la Culture et plusieurs de nos institutions culturelles, plusieurs des artistes ici présents, et je veux toutes et tous les en remercier, ont signé des accords importants en ce sens. Cette étape et ce nouveau partenariat culturel entre l'Indonésie et la France reposera entre autres sur deux piliers. Le premier pilier, c'est la coopération patrimoniale et muséale. L'Indonésie possède un patrimoine exceptionnel et la France est honorée d'apporter son expertise à sa préservation, sa valorisation à travers des projets concrets dans cet esprit de respect, de dialogue et de professionnalisation mutuelle. Il y a une coopération qui existe déjà entre le Centre des Monuments Nationaux et l'Indonesian Heritage Agency en matière de formation. Et je me réjouis de ce point de vue de l'accueil prochain de jeunes professionnels indonésiens dans les musées français, essentiels pour que nos deux pays continuent à apprendre l'un de l'autre. Une étude commune sera lancée sur une sélection de sites patrimoniaux indonésiens identifiés comme prioritaires. Nous accompagnerons la mise en œuvre d'actions concrètes en fonction des besoins exprimés par nos partenaires indonésiens. Et la ministre de la Culture, son ministère, les écoles, les musées, les centres de recherche français se tiennent prêts à participer à ces initiatives. Sans être exhaustif, ce matin, l'École française d'Extrême-Orient en matière d'histoire, d'archéologie a signé des partenariats. Le Grand Palais sur les questions d'expertise, de transmission, le musée Guimet aussi qui prépare des expositions importantes et fera travailler des artistes contemporains également. Le deuxième pilier, ce sont les industries culturelles et créatives, au cœur du dynamisme de nos sociétés. Et il y a avec nous aujourd'hui plusieurs représentants éminents de ces dernières. La France et l'Indonésie partagent en effet une même ambition, faire de la culture une force économique, un espace d'innovation, un terrain d'émancipation pour les jeunes générations. Et ce partenariat, noué aujourd'hui, c'est aussi un pari sur la création, sur l'avenir, sur cette jeunesse talentueuse, connectée, inventive en France et en Indonésie. C'est le sens des initiatives que nous avons lancées et que nous allons continuer à développer en matière de cinéma, grâce à de nouvelles coopérations avec le Centre national du cinéma et de l'image animée et avec la FEMIS, avec en particulier des partenariats pour la formation, la diffusion, les coproductions, mais également pour expliquer et dans le cadre de ce partenariat, pouvoir essayer de vous aider à bâtir un modèle de financement de l'inventivité, d'un cinéma d'arrêt d'essai, d'une liberté créative qui ne soit pas simplement dépendante des grands modèles comme la France a su le faire. Dans le domaine de la mode et des métiers d'art aussi, avec l'incubateur Pintou, et je remercie ces artisans ici présents, nous allons poursuivre les initiatives déjà lancées en matière de formation. Plusieurs écoles sont ici présentes également, de partenariat avec la Fashion Week en France. Et vous avez ici également plusieurs designers et représentants avec leur talent, d'ores et déjà à Paris, la capacité de création de votre pays. En matière de jeux vidéo, de design, la Cité de Saint-Étienne, entre autres, et plusieurs autres partenaires, d'art visuel, de gastronomie, je pourrais ici continuer à égrener les différentes coopérations que nous avons scellées ou consolidées à l'occasion de ce partenariat. Je veux donc saluer tous les artistes et représentants des industries culturelles et créatives d'Indonésie qui sont à nos côtés, dont le talent est déjà connu, dont le talent est déjà célébré en France, du Festival de Cannes à la gastronomie française ou aux couturiers les plus talentueux et les plus repérés. Et je veux enfin, pour conclure, évoquer une méthode. Nous mettons en place un partenariat équilibré et bénéficiant à nos deux pays. Un partenariat fondé sur l'échange, l'élaboration conjointe de projets, le respect des identités, la mise en œuvre de nos talents, de nos écoles, de nos musées, de nos institutions, de nos entrepreneurs culturels, afin d'en faire un outil vivant au service de nos imaginaires et de nos savoir-faire. Et nous retrouver ensemble, très humblement et avec un immense respect devant ce temple de Borobudur, et pouvoir lancer ce partenariat d'avenir est pour moi un immense privilège, Monsieur le Président. Je veux vous dire l'estime et l'admiration qu'a la France pour votre culture, ce qu'elle a déjà dit au monde et tout ce que vos jeunes artistes ont encore à dire. Et nous souhaitons être des partenaires de confiance, des amis et, je l'espère, également des créatrices et des créateurs qui avanceront à vos côtés. Je vous remercie. Vive l'Indonésie, vive la France et vive l'amitié entre nos deux pays. Terima kasih.
We would like to take this moment for another photo session
with Madame Brigitte Macron. Madame Brigitte, please kindly join the presidents on the steps. Thank you.
So we've just witnessed the joint press statement from both President Alin, yeah?
That's right.
From President Prabowo Subianto and as well from President Emmanuel Macron. From President Prabowo Subianto, President Prabowo mentioned that in